Dr. Elizabeth Castle. I believe she prefers Beth. Yes. She is the main director of the Warrior Women documentary, which all of you have had a chance to see. And then we have Marcela Gilbert. She's from, so sorry about this, Lakota and Dakota, is a long member of AIM, and we will remember survival group, currently active in the Cheyenne River Reservation based grandmothers groups, Wash Gi Yanaji, sorry if I butchered that, and the Warrior Women Project. Most recently, she co-founded Not So Society to raise awareness about and whistleblow human trafficking and violence against women, girls, and relatives. She earned a master's degree in nutrition and as a community organizer with a focus on food sovereignty and cultural revitalization. She's working to bring back and make sustainable traditional foods. She has recently launched a radio internet podcast about nutrition on Cheyenne River through the tribal radio station KIPI. And last but not least, Madonna Thunderhawk, who is a Lakota matriarch, organizing force behind every modern occupation from Alcatraz, Wounded Knee, and recently Standing Rock. Born and raised across Lakota homelands, she was radicalized in the late 1960s as a force of nature within the American Indian movement and co-founded Women of All Red Nations and Black Hills Alliance. And as we all know, she is a powerful voice in this community. And Madonna, I'd like to personally thank you for all the work that you've done. I greatly appreciate it. So let's get right into it. So my first question goes out to the three of you. The documentary goes over a great deal in terms of time and place, and a lot of us wonder, how do you keep the commitment to your cause after all of this time, especially in the face of consistent adversity? And if you need me to repeat the question, I can repeat it.
Well, I suppose I could start out. Hello, everyone. I'm really honored to be here. Yeah, I get that question quite a bit. You know, people want to know, I guess it's because of my age, seeing that I'm still, I'm still around, but it's hard to explain because it was never an individual thing with me. I was always part of a, extended family, a part of a group. Our people are still tribal people. We're still land-based. So our issues are the same. Our issues never change because we're land-based. And we're right in the middle of the United States. And so our struggle is really very unique to all others in this country because we're indigenous. And because of the status that our ancestors, when they gave up millions and millions of acres of land, what they bargained for was status, nation to nation status with the United States government. That's why we can hold the government's feet to the fire on land issues and all the destructive progress, as it's called, that's happening to the environment. The taking of resources from the land, but also water. So our issues don't change. So then to me, it's a responsibility. And many of our people that are involved, it's a responsibility. It's not just an action or just a part of your life that you decide to be active. With us, it's a responsibility. And we're ancestors strong because that's what they did. So I could be here and talk. So that's where it's at for me.
I can add a little bit to that. I think growing up in the movement and watching my family and, you know, all the adults around me work to protect our lands and our languages and things like that. If you grow up with that, then that's what you know, and that's what you do. And you're within that family, and not just the family, but your people expect you to make, you know, to stand up for everyone. And so I don't think it's a matter, I don't, you know, I don't think it's like, oh, I think about it like, oh, am I going to do it again? Am I going to do it again? Am I going to do it? You know, it's not like that. It's more like, okay, here we go again. It's time to go, you know, that kind of thing. So like my mom said, it's a responsibility, and someone has to do it because no one's doing it. You know, the fight for the earth is there's not enough of us in it. And we, you know, we're related. We believe that we're related to the earth. So of course, we need to stand up and fight for what's left. So yeah, you just do it.
So I think the part that I come at it from a little bit of a different perspective, because I wasn't born into it in the way Marcy's describing. And for most of you, the narrow, like the framework is that I'm a co-director of the film, but the film is really powerful and we're really proud of the work of it, but it's just this, still ends up being a snapshot window into intergenerational struggle. And I came at it, you know, when I started doing things that led to the film, it was, you know, 24 years ago now, when I very first started asking questions for a dissertation that I was doing because I wanted to know the story. And I wanted to know more because I was trying to figure out my place in the world. And I knew that I didn't fit with all the expectations that were out there. And the one thing I can say in my tiny window compared to, you know, comparatively to certainly to Madonna, is that it is amazing to both see things absolutely not change whatsoever and see them in these cycles. That's why the film has, you know, they're just like, sometimes people are like, I don't know what to do with the chronology. And it's called, it doesn't matter when, right? Just drop on in. It's just, it changes a little bit. But at the same time, it's sort of crazy now to be navigating the change that is happening, that is powerful, about the fact that we're talking, that first of all, that we're here talking about it, right? And that I'm not just like a film director who stopped in for a while. Like what we do is ongoing. And that's the other part, is that, you know, I think we're in that space now where I don't know that people didn't, you know, like, do you have privilege to have a choice of whether you're in the fight to save the earth? Like people still think that, and some people do, but otherwise we're things have shifted so powerfully that, you know, it's still like we need the matriarchs, we need the stories, and we need the knowledge. And so that's part of what we do on an ongoing fashion. It's just a little, it's just hard. It's a little less sexy because you're like, you know, we're trying to change the way people think, right? In a different worldview. So sometimes it does, like the reason I'm struggling now is I'm trying to constantly create ways to do all this without getting sucked into all the organizational things that suck you dry, like a nonprofit or filmmaking, politics, academia, and like, how do you keep the movement spirit alive? And so that's the part that's exciting though, when we get to talk to folks, is that, you know, we're all in a struggle now, you know, and so let's connect because we need each other, because we've got to find that type of solidarity. So that's the solidarity in action that we're looking at next. So that keeps me going, even though 10 minutes ago I was really cussing around because I have taxes due and I'm going to go to jail, you know, and Anyway, so my dog is scared. He's blind and he's in the corner, and I actually frightened him because I was like just yelling. So that, you know, it's exciting.
Thank you. So I'm going to pass it on to Natalie here to ask the next question.
So the next question we have for you all is, as staff at the Norco Library, we are attempting to build an archive of local history that specifically revolves around BIPOC history in our community, as that's something that has been historically suppressed. And the question that we have for you is, how have you kept your history alive? And would you have any advice for young people who feel that they're not being accounted for or are unworthy of being accounted for?
Can you say that again?
So as Norco staff, we're trying to build an archive of history that's specifically revolving around BIPOC people in our community, because that's something that's been historically repressed here or suppressed. And we want to know how you've kept your history alive and any advice you would have for young people who feel that they are not represented in history or feel unworthy of representation.
First of all, I want to say that it's been my experience that young people in this society are not valued at all. Very little value, from little ones all the way. And so I think there's a lot of different ways to express their power. And, the history tells us, like, back in the 60s and 70s, when young people were demonstrating at campuses and, all the civil rights movements that were going on and all that, I think there's a lot of institutions in place that are dependent on young people.
Mhm.
And I think those are the places that young people can make their voices heard. So, like, schools would not exist without young people. You could have all the best teachers and all the best administrators, but without young people, they don't mean anything. And so I think finding those places where young people have that kind of power, and then just saying, you know what, this is how it's going to be. Get together with your friends. With social media now, it only takes one or two people to say something and a sign, and it gets all over the media, and there you go, you got a movement. So I think young people are going to have to unfortunately take it upon themselves, because adults are blowing it. We're not taking care of them. We're not paying attention to them as we should, and the government certainly isn't. So look at your history, and then there is so different now. There's so many different ways that young people are expressing themselves now that weren't happening 20 years ago even. And so, it's their time. It's, take it, go for it, do what makes sense to you, because it is your future. And, if we're not making your future for you or helping you, then, move on. We don't deserve to come with you if we ain't gonna help you, it's your future. So do what you gotta do and stand, make those stands, stand up where you need to and make that noise. Because, like I said, social media, it's easy to make noise now. Everybody hears it or sees it. So And then, you know, pick those that you know, that you want support from. And as adults, we, you know, it's our responsibility to help you. And if we don't want to do that, then, you know, move on, leave us behind. We don't deserve to be with you. But I think your power is definitely in your hearts and in your minds, and it's your future, and you have a right to exist, and you have a right to have a say. I don't have a plan book or anything, but I support you.
Radical librarians is what we're talking, you know, so Marcy has the plan. But the funny part is, like, we're talking about activism often. First of all, is that we have to reframe activism. It's part of like what we all need to do. We need to, you know, we're shifting that. So activism doesn't sit over here. And some people do that, right? Like, how are we going to shift that model? So what you're doing, and that's part of what we have been doing in developing the Warrior Women Project. And what I would add to that specifically is that the community-based archiving movement is a thing. And you might be part of it, you might not, depending upon, you know, just sort of where the pockets are that get connected. But that's one of the things that's happened, like with the Andrew Mellon Foundation. They're, you know, and keeping in mind, these are all institutions, right? Institutions which typically, you know, the reason there's nonprofits is to keep people, you know, all of this is like so that people can have tax write-offs, right? You know, often this circle and this cycle. But one of the things on a basic level is, like, if you're talking in the context of the library and talking about BIPOC or Black and Indigenous peoples and people of color, and, you know, first of all, be, you know, sure that the framing works in the context of what your community is. And then what are the oral histories and what are the stories that need to be told that aren't being told, that you can tap into and look into a way in which you can do like StoryCorps or small events where people can come and bring a relative and interview a relative or swap, you know, like part of it. Sometimes it's hard to talk within your own family, but, you know, and there's models out there. Some of the things that we do is on-site interviewing. And then you're creating the documents that build the stories that then cannot be dismissed, you know, so there is that aspect of like, you know, the archive is the powerful place where you can erase a people, you can erase, you know, things that happen and that can't happen anymore. And that's part of what, like, we're not revising a story. The story was never told. So, you know, you've got to really get connected with the type of the people and the literature and the social movements that are going to stop waiting around for the trash, like the dumpster fire that American history is. Like, don't be trying to waste your time with too much of that, but tell the stories of resilience and survival that are in the community. And you can do that, and you can take your cues from the community.
So Madonna, did you want to add anything to that, or?
No, they covered it pretty good. I don't know exactly what the question was about the history. You know, how do we, you know, that was it. All I could think of is, you know, my world, of course, you know, and my people, and our history is a living history for us. We don't have to study it and go look for it. You know, we know it, again, because we're land-based, and what happened in our history guaranteed that at least we have something left of a land base in this country. So that's what's really important for us, is and we're, of course, we're, you know, traditionally we were didn't have a written history, you know, and so it's important that, you know, we live it, we live our history.
So our next question is, I guess mainly towards Beth. When did you first conceptualize, or for all three of you really, when did you first conceptualize Warrior Women, and will there be any future projects that complement it? Or are there any current projects that complement it?
Yes. Madonna, I mean, all of us are busier than ever. And I think that's the one part about that's powerful about having a documentary that y'all can see, and it's a product. And so you're like, ooh, they matter, right? We've got their story out there. Is that, you know, for every like minute that ended up in the documentary, there's like a year of stories behind it. So a lot of the goals right now are, first of all, that we're building the archive itself. And that's a new thing. I guess I would drop out. If you haven't seen this, or have you ever come across Makutu? Though it's an open source. It's basically a new idea that can have some real potential and be great to see how we work with it and whether you all have connected with it as folks who work in a library or archive space. Is that it's an open source software that's basically archiving people's oral histories primarily, and you can create communities of access. So then like all the family members could be part of a special group who can all then add to it, right? They can extend it, they can put in photographs, they can comment on it. So it's like a way of like really tangibly putting back history into people's hands. And that way you can have it be totally open access. In other words, anyone can see it and it's up on the internet. Or you can close the access for various reasons, and build things. And then ultimately, and one of our goals too is that the material goes into WorldCat. It is searchable in any part of the world if you put in keywords, which we're also trying to expand, you know, in the metadata. These are things I just learned, so I keep calling them metadata because I'm like, someday it might really make sense to me. But just how like we can tangibly, you know, change the narrative, and then in the process, you know, just the work that both Madonna and Marcy are doing separately on the ground, together. I'm over a couple of states, but you know, I am running things, and there's just the multiple projects, with the grandmothers group, with Najo, and then you know, the other aspect is like making more shorts. We're working on curricula that's sort of tied with that, so you can have short pieces. And then we've also taken the movie and we pulled it apart and created this toolkit called like Join the Survival School, which is where it's aimed towards high school in particular, put together by a very racially and culturally diverse group of college students, so that it can be used to talk about the elements that are in the film that go beyond just the incredibly deep history that you're getting. So all of those things.
Yeah.
That's why I put that info in there so you can check it out, and why I was yelling about taxes. So, and other things. I'm like, there's so much to do, because Madonna's just like, you know, 80 something going on 22. And every time we talk, there's more things that are happening. We just want to see, you know, because, you know, the world's sort of on fire, and we can't deny it anymore. And that's why we also see such the backlash is so hot right now. So we're like, all these things are happening, and there's people like, you know, doing some of the craziest stuff we've ever seen. But that's what happens when you really push people.
Well, I want to share that Beth spent, I don't know how many years before we met her. Well, when she came out, asked my mom to do an interview. During those years, she was interviewing many other women involved in the Red Power movement. So she has 24 years of interviews. And so that's part of the archive that she's talking about, but that's also the inspiration for the film. And I remember when she first started thinking about it, she was like, okay, I want to do a film of all these women. And so she went out and she was talking to them, getting in touch with them again, and they started dropping out because they were older and some of them had passed away and like that. And so then it got to the point where she had to get moving because funding and all that kind of stuff. And so it turned out, okay, we're gonna focus on Madonna. And, and my mom was like, I don't want this to be the Madonna Thunderhawk show. We're not doing that. So Beth had a lot of work to do to figure out, okay, how do we make this not about Madonna? So she put a lot of work into it. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting and fun, and sometimes it was a pain. It took a while to come together, but the end product was pretty amazing. But I just wanted to share that because she didn't mention it.
So I'll go ahead and hand it back to Natalie.
So Ivan gave me all of the longest questions. So if any of you need me to repeat them, just
Feel
let
free
me
to cut some of them too.
But he didn't cut the longest ones.
And we can help you with them. Like, I like getting into it. We don't have to perform it if we were like, let's get to the, and we can gong the questions we don't want to answer. How about that?
That sounds great. Thank you so much, ladies. So the film goes over what many see as intense events and struggles in history, yet throughout the film, there is levity and laughter. Some of us as organizers, activists, community members, sometimes get lost in the emotional turmoil and burnout. Would you say that laughter, joy, and positivity have played an important part in your community organizer experience? And are they aspects that come out naturally, or do you have to set aside space to cultivate them? That was pretty long.
Wow.
So do we plan
Well,
to
I will
laugh?
say,
We plan to plan, and then we plan to laugh. And we laugh like 1 hour a day where we do like,
yeah, right. No, I think the humor is just a natural piece of it, because part of our history is to tease. And so, and there's a reason for that, is so that nobody gets like this and starts thinking they can control the world or whatever. But so that's been something that's been a part of our history for forever. And so there's always someone teasing us about something, even in very serious situations, someone will try to tease someone or throw in something to break it up. So it's almost like a natural thing. It's just like, someone's always saying something. So it's not planned for sure. But when it happens, it's awesome. I can't remember where I heard this or who said it, but a woman, I think I heard it in a women's history class or something. But she said, I'm not going to join your revolution if I'm not allowed to dance. So you gotta allow the space. You gotta not take yourself so seriously. You know what the work is, you know what you're doing.
Mhm.
So, you're allowed to have fun too.
Love that so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's see. So it looks like in the film, there's a lot of communal bonding. So our question to you all is, how do you create a communal space in places that are racist, classist, and sometimes just outright hostile?
how do you live on the reservation? right? Like, I mean, like, that's also the part where you're like, sorry, it's just, border towns. Anyway.
Border town, yeah.
Mm.
You know what I think? I mean, actually, I never really thought of, some of these questions are interesting because to me, it's just like, well, you want to just say, well, that's the way it is, but there's more to it than that, I realize, but it's like it's almost an intergenerational way of dealing with the surrounding lives, like the border towns, the white racism, it's almost like from one generation to the other, it's almost a pattern. So you know how to survive in it, you know how to operate, and you don't get overwhelmed, you don't get, burnt out, that kind of stuff, because it's not that kind of a struggle. It's intergenerational. And the bottom line is survival. So I think that, that's how you learn from the time you're young. You learn how to operate in the circumstances that you choose to be a part of. And not all of our people are thinking like that. Many of our people are so colonized, they fall for anything, and they think they're whatever, they fall for anything that comes along that's a fad, So we're definitely products of colonization. So those of us that are still, holding the line that our ancestors laid out for us, it's good because there's many of us, and so we have that environment where we can thrive as activists and stuff, because that's our history, that's who our people are. But we don't dwell on it. We don't wait for approval. I mean, come on. Who you need permission from, to be a human, and walk the path your ancestors left. You look at it terms like that, it's pretty simple. And burnout, what's that? Who's that? Anyway, that's what I think. Next question.
I think just asking your neighbor. I mean, like the way Najol got started. I just kept hearing stories of women being chased on the roads, off the reservation to some of the border towns and cities, and women were being chased by cars that didn't have license plates, or they were being chased by two men in a vehicle, and things like that. So I just asked a friend, I said, hey, what do you think about putting out a flyer and having a meeting about what's happening to women on our res? And so we did that, and a bunch of people showed up. By our third meeting, we had over 50 people. So I think just, like I said, it only takes one or two. And if you know that the issue is happening in your community, other people know it too. So the thing about racism is it's always going to be here. I mean, that's the thing. It's always going to be. I mean, even as a mother, and trying to explain that to my kids, and trying to raise them in a way that, they're not affected or not controlled by it. But at the same time that I'm trying to teach my children and grandchildren to be good human beings and be good relatives, there's a racist out there teaching his children how to be racist to people of color. And it's a constant. It's frustrating as heck, man. And it's just, and the fact that this country builds their power from that is criminal. I mean, that's a long discussion. We could talk about that for days, but it's frustrating.
go ahead and hand it back to Natalie.
Okay. So this next question is absolutely related to what you guys were just talking about and some things you've said a little bit earlier. And, I would like to say that as like Native women, we are born activists. We don't have a choice to not be activists. But what would you say to a young, inexperienced person that wants to start their activism? Where would you think they should start it?
That's a good one. Well, it has to be what they're passionate about, because you don't want to pick something that you're going to get bored in a week, or you don't want to do with people, or, it's got to be something that you feel passionate about. That's something that's really meaningful to you. And it doesn't have to be a big, giant issue, because in this society, we suffer from everything. Everything is an issue. The food we eat, the water we drink, the air we breathe, everything, the medications we take, the transportation, everything is an issue in this country. So you could pick one or two or three, and then just, like I said, just, ask your friend, what do you think of this? And they might know someone, or, put it online. Everything's online. But I think it's more about, what do you really want to spend your life's passion doing? Because it will, if it's something that's a part of you and you're passionate about it, it's going to be a lifelong situation.
Right.
So totally up to you. And there's plenty of issues to look at. Plenty. And like Mom said, you don't need permission, just do it.
The thing I would add is also be radically collaborative, and be really conscious about how you're doing it, because we keep, just from the historian framework and looking back at things, part of the challenge is, like we're talking about at the most root level for survival, the need to shift our worldview, the way that we look at the world, and to keep alive the worldviews that have sustained a people in the most impossible circumstances. So there's always going to be challenges with that. But, right now, one of the parts in our capitalist society is that we sort of some things move and open up, but the systems don't. Like some language will, and maybe some philosophy, but the systems don't shift. So being conscious of that, so that you don't just knock your head on the wrong wall. You want to find like Marcy said, find something that's going to sustain you, and, spend less time trying to think about what your career is going to be in your lifetime, honestly, and more about like, how do you get by? How do you survive? And then how do you radically collaborate with other people, and live your values, as much as you can. And, Madonna, it's amazing to me that like the infinite patience she has to have the same conversation every other day, but still, hang in there for it, because it is like, don't need permission. Everybody, we're all waiting for permission, even from ourselves, to go do it. So you have it.
Good one.
Thank you so much.
So for our next question, as leaders in your communities, you guys much have a very historic past. What are some things you felt you would have liked to have known at the beginning of your leadership journeys that you would like to impart onto future leaders?
What?
So,
What?
so because
You
of
shorten
your,
it up a little bit.
yeah, so because of your experience as leaders, what are some things that you'd like to let future leaders know?
Wow. You know, I, I don't even know how to answer something like that because to me, it's not relevant to me. I mean, in my, of course, I remember, I started out back in the '60s, so it's a different time. It was different worlds then, different way of thinking. So I just think that the how it worked for me, the big picture was everything was a learning experience. So I never got bored. I never, if somebody gave me you know, a map and say, "Hey, do this, but I want to do that," I probably would have veered off, a long time ago, went the other way or something. I don't know. But to me, it was such of an experience, that just kept kept me going, because I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to do, and then some people think, maybe academics is a thing for them, what they're supposed to do, or maybe stay home and raise children and have a real good family, do a good job as a parent. Maybe that's their thing. And so we all have our road, our path. It's just that how are we going to do it? And are we going to do it, the best way we can? And are we going to learn along the way and keep it interesting? All of that's a responsibility, so you really can't, shoot too far, I don't think. Of course, if you want to be a capitalist and chase the dollar, then then you probably should have a roadmap, or something. But to work with, in the real world of people and issues, that's the last thing you need. You just need experience and courage, You got to have fight. You got to be in the fight.
I think the other part of that too is being informed. Know what your issue is, know everything about it. I mean, that was one of the things that I learned in survival school. Don't be talking just to be talking. If you have a good rap, people are gonna be like, "Oh, that person sounds really cool, man," and you got followers. But if that's all you have, you're not much of a leader. It's too easy to bail. But I learned that in survival school because mom always told us, don't be talking about stuff you don't know anything about. If you don't know what you're talking about, keep your mouth shut and listen and learn. So I think that's and then those who are natural leaders, that's a, those who are natural leaders tend to, I would like to see more of a I don't know, more of a support system. I mean, I've seen leaders in the movement who are passionate and all of that, and they're leading people in the right way, and they're successful. But I've also seen those same leaders stand alone. And so I think leaders, people who find themselves in those positions have to be prepared to stand alone sometimes. Be the only one going for it, because sometimes the people are like, I don't know about that, even though it's the right thing to do. And so being informed and then just knowing that sometimes you're going to be the only one taking on the fight. And then the other thing is bring your young people along. You know, make room for them, make sure they have exposure to the information, and because they're going to be the next ones. And being truthful and just, you know, bringing them along with you. But nowadays, everybody can be a leader, because like I said, that there's so many issues and we're all in the same boat now. Our issues aren't very different from each other's now. So everybody on the screen, we have a pretty good group here. We could go kick some butt somewhere.
Well, also the thing that we just did is the part where, you know, we ask a question based on the things that we know, and then we're like, see, that's the problem. We're still talking about leadership. Well, what the hell is that, right? We've been fighting that question for so dang long that, you know, it's like the thing we're all suffering from. Like, we've got world leaders, like, we got to stop, but it's still hard to replace the term. It's even hard to make a film without a protagonist, right? But I think that's the part of it, you know, that we're trying to do, and it's important, is just like that idea of an ecosystem or a support network, right? Or how do we better describe it? Because you absolutely can't take one person out of a space, you know, that everybody has a role. And that part, you know, and just that fundamental fact that we just, like, we didn't spend as much time. We got a lot of pushback on the film in certain ways where they're like, well, what, you know, where were the men? What were the men doing? And how can we, you know, that framework where you're just like, let's undo the basic layer of patriarchy, where we ask, you know, well, what were the women's roles, right? That is just such a lame question. And we still hear it, right? But it's just, you know, this is the part now is, you know, and this is part of what's different too, is that we're all working together intergenerationally. And I'm trying to remind myself all the time, where I've got people younger than me and I'm just like, can't you work faster? You know, where I'm like, I already know what you need to know. And, you know, because there's so much to do, but just the fact that, you know, this is how the fact that history is living. Like, to me, it's always like, I have to explain, like, oh my God, history, it's like the most important thing we don't know. How we're just lost humans without it. It's like how we survive. And now's the time of, like, we have a history emergency. And so suddenly, you know, just we have so much to learn from Indigenous matriarchy, that is a word now that we didn't use 20 some years ago, or even 10 years ago. And now it's pretty hot and we see it in social media. So that's the only other thing, is like, when it comes to community, like, you know, find some of your ride or dies here. And also, you don't have to love them either too. Like, that's the other part, is like the solidarity that could happen. And that's like why our next project is, like Marcy says, we're all in a boat. We don't need a whole lot of different boats in terms of the fighting, right? If we're in terms of fighting for the earth, we can't have like the native boat and the anti-racist, you know, super woke boat, and, you know, the Afro-Indigenous boat. We need to think about, like, how we function in that boat, and then we don't get competitive in our actual organizing, right? And those things, like, that's what I mean about being radically collaborative. Like, how do we invite, like, I'm just like, the more people that are using language and engaging and making difference and change, be in, you know, welcome that in and do that.
So I think we're coming to our last question, or like last official question. So what do you guys think that we, as the library, as a public institution, can do to support Indigenous histories? I know that Beth had mentioned Mukurtu, which is amazing software. But I'd really like to hear what you guys specifically think there is that we could do daily.
God, there's so much you could do daily. You guys have like schools go there every day?
Sherman Indian School is nearby.
Yeah, Sherman Indian School is nearby, but it's a couple cities over. So like those kids really don't like wander over here very often. We get like mostly like elementary, middle school kids from the local schools.
I don't know. I'm just thinking of this time of critical race theory where they're trying to erase whole populations of people in our history.
Mhm.
There's got to be something that libraries can do as a united front, you know?
An oral history project.
When you guys figure it out, let us know.
You'll be the first.
I was serious about radical librarians. Like, you should check out Documenting the Now. And you should check out, there's an alliance that is developed recently of community archivists or community archiving. And part of that is, as a library institution, I mean, one thing you can do is create like a StoryCorps model. It can be just a small on-site day of doing, short recorded oral histories that, and the part is that you can show people, it just depends. There's all kinds of different ways, but you can upload it and make it available right away and do, some promotion, but just show people that their stories matter and their stories are part of a larger story. And people can't mess with that. You don't have to frame the language in any certain way that's going to press the buttons. I mean, I know your area of California is not the Bay Area, right?
Right.
Or LA, and I get that big time. But I live in Ohio, and like Ohio and South Dakota are just down in the bottom, like the bucket, the barrel, the lowest end of like the crazy shit that happens here, right? I mean, I can't teach. That's one of the reasons I quit teaching at the university is I can't teach. You can take African American or Native American history, but you can't get credit for it in the high schools now because they have actually passed their, critical race theory ban. So that's what's happening in those spaces. And so, you, as a library, you're not, at least the state level politics are not dangerous in that way. And also the ethnic studies requirements that are happening. I do work with a group at Berkeley, and I know Berkeley's Berkeley, but a lot of the students come from that area. And they're doing incredible things with ethnic studies, requiring ethnic studies in high school to graduate. And so, getting connected with some of that, but I'm sure, we haven't had a chance to hear from you all, but doing something tangible that doesn't have to be just, it's political in the fact that you're pushing back against a dominant narrative, but you're also giving a chance for people to tell stories, and people can't mess with that. So that's what I would recommend.
Well, we're about to come up to our time. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you three for being a part of this. This is new for us. So thank you for being a part of this, and thank you for enlightening us the way you have. Since we do have about 7, 8, 9, 3 more minutes, I did want to tell everyone else in this Zoom call, Beth has put in a mailing list if you guys want to be a part of that. There's also some social media links at the very top of the chat relating back to the Warrior Women Project. So please check it out. Please support them and everything they do. And yeah, overall, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Thank you.
I see Donnie LeBeau lurking in there. Do you see her name? She just
What?
jumped in.
Is she
I
in there?
know. Yeah. Well, before y'all go, we mean it. Like, you join the mailing list sounds lame, but it's the community, it's what we're creating as the community. We want people like part of a network. So, self-organized, late to the party. So Donnie's from Cheyenne River and also has been part of
Oh,
Warrior.
to everyone. I love the word. There's Donnie.
There we go. And especially if you're in California where everybody's like, oh, they're California, they're fine. You're like the Ohio of California. Really sorry. We're the South Dakota of California. We're here for you. We're here for you, and we laugh. Come be part of our team. So thank you for your time.
Bye.